My name is Verna Martin, and I am 27 years old. Up until my graduation day, I believed I understood what my parents were capable of. I was wrong. The moment arrived on a Saturday afternoon. The auditorium was bright and buzzing, smelling of roses, cheap champagne, and possibility. My name wasn't whispered. It was announced through speakers that echoed off every wall. Verna Grace Martin, summa cum laude. For 3 perfect seconds, I was untouchable. The cap sat heavy on my head like a crown I'd bled for. The gown felt like armor I'd forged through sleepless nights and double shifts at the campus library. Then I saw them in the crowd. Not sitting with the proud parents in their Sunday best, but standing in the back beside a man in an expensive suit I didn't recognize. Their expressions were sharp, calculated. Their smiles were cold and transactional, as if I were already merchandise to be appraised and divided. When I reached the reception hall and heard my mother's voice, not congratulating me, but explaining to my aunt how my grandmother's inheritance was family money they'd be managing responsibly, the ground beneath my cap and gown didn't just crack. It shattered. They were trying to take everything my grandmother left me, my own parents. If you want to see how I took back everything they tried to steal, and trust me, the revenge is sweeter than you can imagine, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what happens next? They never saw it coming. For years. That's how long it took me to build the fortress they were now trying to breach. For years of 18-hour days split between lectures and the campus library's circulation desk. 4 years of eating ramen in my dorm room while my roommate ordered takeout. 4 years of professors praising my work ethic while I fought to keep my eyes open during seminars because I'd been stocking shelves at the 24-hour grocery store until 3 in the morning. Summa cum laude didn't happen by accident. It happened because failure wasn't an option I could afford. My parents made sure I understood that from the beginning. Every semester, when my financial aid disbursement arrived, they'd call. We raised you for 18 years, Verna. Fed you. Clothed you. Kept a roof over your head. You think that came free? My mother's voice was always honey-sweet when she said it, as if she were simply reminding me of basic mathematics rather than collecting a debt I'd supposedly been accruing since birth. I sent the money. Not because I wanted to, but because the alternative was worse. The crying phone calls, the guilt trips, the threats to cut me off completely as if they'd ever given me anything to cut off in the first place. But grandmother was different. Grandmother saw me, not as an investment that should have yielded better returns. Not as a disappointment because I chose education over business school, or because I wasn't married with children by 25. She saw me as someone worth protecting. You're going to do extraordinary things, Verna, she told me the last time I visited her before she passed. We were sitting in her garden, surrounded by the roses she'd spent 40 years cultivating. And when I'm gone, I'm going to make sure you have the resources to do them without anyone holding you back. I didn't understand then. I thought she meant emotional support, belief in me, the kind of love that doesn't come with a ledger attached. But 3 months after her funeral, when her lawyer called me into his office and explained the terms of her will, I finally understood. She'd left me everything. The house, the investments, the collection of first edition books she'd treasured. Nearly $2 million, waiting for me to finish my degree and turn 25. She'd built me an escape route. But there were conditions. Conditions designed specifically to protect the inheritance from the 2 people who would most want to take it. My parents. The lawyer's words had been careful, clinical. Your grandmother was very clear about her concerns regarding your parents' influence. She wanted to ensure this money served its intended purpose, your freedom, not their comfort. Now, standing in this reception hall with my diploma in hand and my parents' lawyer 3 feet away, I realized grandmother had known exactly what was coming. She'd prepared me for war. I learned to count before I learned to read. Not numbers on a page, but the cost of existing in my parents' house. I was 7 the first time my mother sat me down with a calculator and a stack of receipts. Do you know how much it costs to raise a child, Verna? She didn't wait for an answer. Her fingers flew across the keys: groceries, utilities, clothes from the discount store, doctor's visits. $63.42. That's what we spent on you just this week. She wrote the number in a small notebook she kept in the kitchen drawer. My name was at the top of the page. Below it, a running tally that grew every week like a tumor. By the time I was 10, I understood that love in our house had a price tag. Every birthday present came with a reminder of its cost. Every Christmas morning was followed by an afternoon of my father explaining what he could have bought for himself with that money. But we sacrifice for you, sweetheart. That's what parents do. The word sacrifice was their favorite weapon. They wielded it like a blade, sharp and precise, cutting away any sense of worth I tried to build. When I was 13 and wanted to join the school orchestra, my mother sighed as if I'd asked her to donate a kidney. Do you have any idea what a violin costs? That's not even including lessons. She bought it anyway, a cheap rental from the music store, but made sure I knew. You'll pay us back someday. When you're successful. When you remember who got you there. Except they never wanted me to be successful on my own terms. When I told them I wanted to study literature in college, my father laughed. Literature? What's that worth? You'll never make enough to pay back what we've invested in you. What he meant was, you'll never make enough to keep supporting us. Because by then, I'd figured it out. The debt wasn't about repayment. It was about control. As long as I owed them, I belonged to them. Grandmother was the only one who saw through it. They're building a cage for you, darling, she told me when I was 16, visiting her after another brutal fight with my parents about my college plans. And they're making you hold the bars yourself. She never spoke badly about her own daughter, my mother, but she didn't have to. We both knew the truth. She'd raised my mother in a different time, with different values, and somehow the lesson had twisted into something cruel. You don't owe anyone for being born, grandmother said, taking my hands in hers. They were soft and warm, nothing like my mother's grip that always felt like an appraisal. You don't owe anyone for the basic dignity of being cared for as a child. That's not debt, Verna. That's called being a parent. I cried that day. Not because I believed her, not yet, but because someone had finally said the words I'd been too afraid to think. Grandmother died on a Tuesday in October, surrounded by her roses, even though it was too late in the season for them to bloom. The funeral was small, dignified, exactly as she'd requested. My parents performed grief beautifully, my mother's tears perfectly timed, my father's eulogy hitting every note of devoted son-in-law. I stood between them in a black dress I'd bought with my last paycheck, watching them mourn the woman they'd spent years resenting for spoiling me with affection they couldn't monetize. The will reading was scheduled for the following week. My parents insisted I attend with them, as if we were a united front. Family matters should stay in the family, my mother said, her hand tight on my shoulder. A warning disguised as comfort. Mr. Harrison, grandmother's attorney, was a man in his 60s with kind eyes and a voice that didn't waste words. He'd known my grandmother for 30 years. He knew exactly what he was doing when he opened that envelope. To my granddaughter, Verna Grace Martin, he began, I leave the entirety of my estate. The room went cold. My mother's face drained of color, then flushed red. The entirety? That can't be right. I'm her daughter, her only child. Mr. Harrison didn't flinch. Mrs. Martin, your mother was very clear in her intentions. The house, all financial assets, investments, and personal belongings are to be transferred to Verna upon two conditions: that she completes her bachelor's degree and reaches the age of 25. This is insane. My father was on his feet now, his grief performance abandoned. We're her parents. We raised that girl. We deserve. You deserve nothing. Mr. Harrison's voice was still calm, but there was steel underneath. Ms. Frost was explicit in her reasoning. The inheritance is structured specifically to protect Verna's interests and ensure the assets are used as intended for Verna's future, not for anyone else's benefit. My mother turned to me, and for a moment I saw something I'd never seen before. Pure, undisguised hatred. You did this. You poisoned her against us. I hadn't said a word. I couldn't. My throat was closed with shock, and something that felt dangerously close to hope. The estate is currently held in trust, Mr. Harrison continued. Verna will have limited access for educational expenses. Full control transfers upon meeting both conditions. My parents left without speaking to me. They didn't say goodbye. They didn't acknowledge me at all. I was already dead to them, or worse, I was already just an obstacle between them and money they'd already spent in their minds. Mr. Harrison waited until the door closed behind them. Then he slid a business card across his desk. Miss Martin, he said quietly, I suggest you keep detailed records of every interaction with your parents from this point forward. Document everything. Phone calls, text messages, financial requests. Everything. I looked up at him. You think they'll try something? I don't think, Miss Martin. I know. His expression was grave. Your grandmother knew too. That's why she hired me. You're going to need proof of exactly who they are. And you're going to need it soon. I became a documentarian of my own exploitation. Mr. Harrison had given me a system, a secure cloud folder, encrypted and password protected, organized by date and category. Every text message got screenshotted. Every voicemail got saved and transcribed. Every bank transaction that went to my parents got logged with the context, what they'd said, what they'd threatened, what lie they'd told to extract it. The folder grew like evidence at a crime scene. Because that's what it was. 3 weeks after the will reading, my mother called. Her voice was syrup-sweet, the performance of maternal concern so polished I almost believed it. Sweetheart, your father and I are having some trouble with the mortgage. Just temporary, you understand. Could you help us out? Maybe $500. I recorded the call. I sent the money, because I was still afraid of what would happen if I didn't. Then I logged it. October 28th. Mother requested $500 for mortgage trouble. Used guilt tactics. After everything we've done for you. Threat implied. Withdrawal of family support. It happened again in November, and December, and January. Each time, the amount grew. Each time, the justification became thinner. We're family, Verna. Family helps each other. But help only flowed one direction, toward them. I met with Mr. Harrison monthly. His office became a confessional where I laid out the evidence of my parents' systematic extraction of everything I earned. They tried to access my student loan refund. I told him in February, sliding printed bank statements across his desk. They called the bursar's office pretending to be me. The school flagged it as fraud. He added it to the file that was becoming a novel-length manuscript of parental predation. In March, my father showed up at my dorm unannounced. We need to talk about your grandmother's house. It's just sitting there empty. Wasteful. We should sell it, split the proceeds. You get your share when you graduate. I knew what split the proceeds meant. I knew what your share would amount to once they finished calculating what I supposedly owed them. The house is in trust, Dad. I can't touch it until I'm 25 and graduate. His expression curdled. You've always been selfish, Verna. Your grandmother filled your head with nonsense about independence. You think you're better than us. I recorded that conversation too. The one where he called me selfish for not giving them assets I didn't even control yet. By my senior year, the folder contained over 200 documented incidents. Phone calls where my mother cried about bills while vacationing in Cancun. Text messages where my father threatened to boycott my graduation if I didn't contribute to their kitchen renovation. Voicemails that oscillated between manipulation and rage depending on whether I'd sent money that week. This is airtight, Mr. Harrison told me during our final meeting before graduation. His expression was grim, with something that looked like pity. If they try anything, and Verna, they will try something, you have everything you need to prove a pattern of financial abuse. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Your grandmother knew this day would come. She knew they'd make their move once you were close to getting the inheritance. She prepared you for this battle. I looked at the file, digital and physical, backed up in 3 locations, ironclad and irrefutable. Good, I said, because I'm ready to win it. I'd love to know, have you ever had to document someone's betrayal just to protect yourself? Drop a comment below, and if you're invested in seeing how this ends, subscribe so you don't miss a single story like this one. The ceremony was perfect until it wasn't. I walked across that stage with my head high, diploma in hand, for years of exhaustion and triumph compressed into 30 seconds of applause. My name echoed through the auditorium. Verna Grace Martin, summa cum laude, and for one crystalline moment, I was exactly who I'd fought to become. Then I saw them waiting at the reception. My parents stood near the refreshment table, but they weren't alone. The man beside them was in his 50s, wearing a suit that cost more than my entire education. His briefcase was leather, expensive, the kind that holds contracts and catastrophes. My mother saw me first. Her smile was triumphant, predatory. She'd been planning this. Verna, darling, come here. Her voice carried across the room, loud enough that several relatives turned to look. We have some exciting news to share. Exciting. The word landed like a threat. I walked over because the alternative was making a scene. My aunt and uncle were watching. My cousins. People from my father's office who'd come to support me with the expectation of free cake and congratulations. This is Mr. Peterson, my father said, gesturing to the man with the briefcase. Our attorney. Our attorney. Not an attorney.
Ours.
Possessive.
Pre-planned.
Mr. Peterson extended his hand. I didn't take it. Miss Martin, your parents have asked me to help facilitate a family discussion about your grandmother's estate. His voice was smooth, practiced, the tone of someone who'd done this before. Now that you've graduated and will be turning 25 next month, certain assets will be transferring to your control. Your parents believe, quite reasonably, that some financial restructuring is in order. My mother stepped closer, her hand finding my arm in a grip that looked affectionate but felt like restraint. Sweetheart, we've been thinking. You're young, inexperienced with this kind of money. It's overwhelming. We want to help you manage it responsibly. Manage it, I repeated, my voice flat. Of course. My father's smile was patronizing, the expression he used when explaining things to people he considered beneath him. Your mother and I have decades of financial experience. We'll set up accounts, handle investments, make sure you don't make any costly mistakes. And naturally, there's the matter of compensation. The word hung in the air like smoke. Compensation. My cousin Emma had drifted closer, curious. Other relatives were gathering now, drawn by the intensity of my parents' performance. My mother's voice rose, clear and carrying, meant for the audience, now watching. For raising Verna, of course. 27 years of food, shelter, education, love. That has value. We're not asking for everything. We're not greedy, but what's fair? What we're owed. Mr. Peterson opened his briefcase. We've prepared preliminary paperwork. A voluntary financial arrangement that compensates your parents for their years of sacrifice while ensuring you retain appropriate access to your funds under their oversight. Under their oversight. Voluntary. My mother was already speaking to my aunt, her voice thick with manufactured emotion. We just want to protect her. She's our daughter. We love her. We'd never forgive ourselves if she squandered what her grandmother worked so hard for. The crowd was nodding.
Sympathetic.
My parents had always been good at this, the performance of concern, the weaponization of love. They thought they'd cornered me. They thought graduation day, surrounded by family, was the perfect ambush. The moment I'd be too proud, too embarrassed, too grateful to say no. They were wrong. My mother started crying first. Not the messy, uncontrolled kind. the calculated variety with just enough tears to glisten without ruining her makeup. I don't understand why you're being so difficult about this, Verna. Her voice trembled perfectly, hitting every note of wounded maternal love. After everything we've sacrificed, after all the years we put you first, worked ourselves to exhaustion to give you opportunities we never had. My aunt reached for my mother's hand. Sharon, honey, I'm sure Verna doesn't mean to seem ungrateful. Doesn't she? My father's voice was sharper now, the velvet glove coming off. Look at her, standing there silent, judging us. Her own parents. We're not asking for charity, Verna. We're asking for basic recognition of what we're owed. The crowd had grown. More relatives, family, friends, people I barely knew who'd shown up for free food and gossip. They were all watching now, and my parents knew it. This was their stage. Do you know what it's like, my mother continued, addressing the crowd now instead of me, to raise a child who looks at you like you're the enemy? To love someone unconditionally and have them treat basic fairness as an attack. Uncle Mark cleared his throat. Now, Sharon, I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding. My father cut him off. My mother-in-law poisoned Verna against us, filled her head with ideas about being independent, about not owing her family anything, as if family doesn't matter, as if we didn't raise her, feed her, clothe her, pay for every single thing she needed for 18 years. 27 years, my mother corrected, her voice breaking. We never stopped supporting her, even through college, even when she barely called us, barely visited. We sent money when she needed it. We were there. That was a lie. A bold, beautiful lie delivered with such conviction that I saw my cousin nodding along. Mr. Peterson, their lawyer, stepped forward with the calm authority of someone used to family disputes. This doesn't need to be contentious. The arrangement we're proposing is entirely reasonable, a structured compensation plan that acknowledges the Martin family's investment in Verna's upbringing while still leaving her with substantial assets. Investment, I said quietly, the first word I'd spoken since this started. My mother seized on it. Yes, sweetheart, an investment. Because that's what parenting is. Investing in your child's future with the understanding that someday, when you're able, you remember where you came from. You honor the people who made you who you are. The old doubt crept in like poison. The voice I'd spent 4 years trying to silence. Maybe they're right. Maybe I am ungrateful. Maybe I do owe them. I saw it in the faces around me. Sympathy for my parents, confusion about my silence, judgment forming like crystals. My mother was still crying. My father's expression was wounded nobility. They looked like the victims. They looked like the parents every child should have. And I looked like the ungrateful daughter who'd forgotten where she came from. The performance was flawless. That's enough. The voice came from the back of the crowd. Quiet, but with the kind of authority that made everyone turn. Mr. Harrison stepped forward, and I watched my mother's face drain of color. Who are you? Mr. Peterson demanded, his professional composure cracking slightly. Gerald Harrison, estate attorney for the late Margaret Frost. He moved through the crowd with the calm precision of someone who'd been waiting for exactly this moment. In his hand was a manila envelope, thick with documents, and legal counsel for Miss Verna Martin regarding her inheritance. My father's expression flickered, confusion, then recognition, then something close to panic. You have no right to be here. This is a private family matter. Actually, Mr. Martin, this became a legal matter the moment you introduced your attorney and attempted to coerce your daughter into signing financial documents at her graduation reception. Mr. Harrison's tone was clinical, factual. He turned to address the crowd. I apologize for the interruption, but I think it's important that everyone here understands the truth about what's being discussed. My mother reached for his arm. Gerald, please. This is embarrassing for everyone. Embarrassment is the least of your concerns, Mrs. Martin. He opened the envelope, pulling out the first document. This is Margaret Frost's last will and testament. Let me read the relevant section. I leave the entirety of my estate to my granddaughter, Verna Grace Martin, with the explicit instruction that no portion shall be used for, distributed to, or controlled by her parents, James and Sharon Martin, under any circumstances. The silence was absolute. Furthermore, Mr. Harrison continued, Mrs. Frost included a detailed memorandum explaining her reasoning. She was concerned, deeply concerned, about a pattern of financial exploitation she had witnessed over the years. Her words, not mine. My daughter and son-in-law have treated Verna as an investment to be harvested rather than a child to be loved. That's slander, my father hissed. My mother-in-law was bitter and manipulative. Your mother-in-law was meticulous. Mr. Harrison pulled out another document. This is a forensic accounting of every financial transaction between Verna and her parents over the past 4 years. $23,000 extracted through guilt, manipulation, and threats. Not loans, there was never any intention to repay. Extraction. My aunt's hand flew to her mouth. Uncle Mark was staring at my parents with dawning horror. Mr. Harrison wasn't finished. Phone records showing 247 calls requesting money. Text messages with explicit threats to disown Verna if she didn't comply. Bank records showing that during the same period your parents claimed financial hardship, they took 2 international vacations and purchased a new vehicle. You had no right. My mother started. I had every right. Verna gave me permission to compile this evidence because she knew this day would come. He turned to Mr. Peterson. Your clients aren't concerned parents. They're con artists who've been running a long-term financial exploitation scheme against their own daughter. Mr. Peterson's face had gone pale. He closed his briefcase slowly, carefully, the movement of someone realizing he'd been lied to. The crowd wasn't looking at me with judgment anymore. They were looking at my parents with disgust. Mr. Harrison wasn't done. He pulled out a bound document, pages thick with highlighted transactions and notarized statements. Let's talk about the math, shall we? His voice carried across the now silent reception hall. Mr. and Mrs. Martin claim they invested in Verna's upbringing and deserve compensation. Let's examine that investment. He flipped to a marked page. According to USDA estimates, the average cost of raising a child from birth to age 18 in a middle-class household is approximately $233,000. That includes food, housing, education, healthcare, everything. The Martins' household income during Verna's childhood averaged $75,000 per year. Well within range. My mother's face was flushed red. You can't put a price on love. You already did, Mrs. Martin. Multiple times. Mr. Harrison's tone was ice. But let's continue. From age 18 to 27, the period you claim you supported Verna through college, bank records show you extracted $23,000 from your daughter. A daughter who was working 2 jobs, taking out student loans, and living on ramen. He held up a bank statement. March 15, 2023. You withdrew $500 from Verna's account. Without permission. She reported it to the bank as fraud, but then withdrew the complaint after you called her 17 times in one evening. My cousin Emma gasped. Uncle Mark was shaking his head in disbelief. June 2023. You attempted to add yourself as a joint account holder on Verna's checking account by forging her signature. The bank caught it and flagged the documents. That was a misunderstanding. My father began. January 2024. You called Verna's University's financial aid office, impersonating her, attempting to redirect her student loan refund to your personal account. The school filed an internal fraud report. Mr. Peterson had moved away from my parents, physically distancing himself. His expression was no longer neutral, it was disgusted. And my personal favorite, Mr. Harrison continued, his voice dripping with contempt, November 2024, 3 weeks ago. You contacted the trust holding Margaret Frost's estate, claiming to be Verna's legal guardians, and demanded immediate release of funds for what you called family emergencies. When the trustee refused, you threatened legal action. My father exploded. We raised her. We gave her everything. She wouldn't even exist without us. So, that entitles you to exploit her? Mr. Harrison didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Exploit. My father's laugh was ugly now, the mask finally cracking completely. She's our daughter. Our property. We made her. Everything she has, everything she is, that's ours. We own it. We own her. The room went absolutely silent. My mother grabbed his arm. James, stop. But he couldn't. 27 years of carefully controlled contempt were pouring out like poison. You think you're better than us, Verna? You think that piece of paper makes you special? You're nothing. You've always been nothing. Just a drain on our resources, and now you won't even pay us back for the burden of keeping you alive. There it was. The truth. Naked and vicious and undeniable.
My aunt was crying now.
Not for my parents, for me. For the child who'd grown up hearing that poison behind closed doors. Mr. Harrison closed the folder. I believe we're done here. Mr. Harrison let the silence settle like ash before he spoke again. Let me be very clear about the legal situation. His voice was calm, but every word landed like a gavel. James and Sharon Martin have no claim, legal, moral, or otherwise, to any portion of Margaret Frost's estate. The will is ironclad. Any attempt to contest it will fail and will result in immediate legal action for harassment. He turned to my parents, and I saw something I'd never seen before. My father looking small. The $23,000 you've extracted from Verna over the past 4 years constitutes financial elder abuse of a dependent adult. Yes, Mr. Martin, at 23, Verna was still legally vulnerable to parental coercion. We have documentation of threats, manipulation, and fraud. If you pursue any further contact or claims, I will file criminal charges. Wire fraud, identity theft, attempted theft by deception. Each carries significant penalties. My mother's tears were different now. Not the performance kind, the desperate, trapped kind. Mr. Peterson cleared his throat. Mr. and Mrs. Martin, as your attorney, I strongly advise you to cease all contact with your daughter immediately. You have no case. You never did. He picked up his briefcase. Our representation ends now. I won't be party to elder abuse or fraud. He walked out. Several relatives followed him, not looking back. My father started toward me, his hand reaching, his face contorted with rage or desperation or both. Verna, you can't do this. We're your parents. You can't just. Mr. Martin, if you take one more step, I'm calling the police. Mr. Harrison had positioned himself between us. You're done. And just like that, they were. My mother looked at the faces around us, family who'd watched her performance, who'd heard my father's venom, who now knew the truth. Her social mask wasn't just cracked. It was shattered. Every carefully cultivated relationship, every bridge she'd built in this community, was burning. I watched them leave. My mother stumbling, my father's hand on her back, still playing the role of supportive husband, even as their world collapsed.
No one said goodbye to them.
No one followed. When the door closed, I realized I was shaking. Mr. Harrison placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. You're free, Verna. I turned to the relatives who'd stayed. My aunt, my uncle, Emma, a handful of others who'd seen through the performance or at least wanted to understand. Thank you for being here, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. I want you to know, grandmother did this because she loved me. Not because she wanted to hurt anyone, but because she wanted to protect me. She saw what was happening long before I had the words for it. My aunt pulled me into a hug. We should have seen it too. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. You see it now, I said. That's what matters. I looked at Mr. Harrison, at the envelope of evidence, at the diploma still clutched in my hand. 4 years of fighting. 27 years of being told I was a debt to be collected. What happens now? Emma asked quietly. I smiled. A real one, not the careful mask I'd worn around my parents for decades.
Now.
I looked toward the door, toward the parking lot, toward the life waiting beyond this room. Now I figure out who I am when I don't owe anyone anything. Mr. Harrison handed me a final document, the trust release forms. My inheritance, waiting for my signature. Freedom, quantified. Happy graduation, Miss Martin, he said. I signed my name. Clean, clear, entirely my own. Then I walked out into the June sunshine, diploma in one hand, my future in the other, and for the first time in 27 years, I didn't look back. Here's what I learned. You don't owe anyone for your existence. Love doesn't come with invoices. Family doesn't mean ownership. And the people who truly care about you, they never keep score. My grandmother taught me that freedom isn't something you inherit, it's something you protect. Sometimes from the very people who claim they gave it to you. If you're in a cage built by guilt, manipulation, or someone else's ledger of what you owe them, know this. You have permission to walk away. You always did. Freedom tastes different when you fought for it. If Verna's story resonated with you, leave a comment telling me what freedom means to you. And subscribe. This channel is for people who refuse to stay in cages built by others. This channel exists for one reason, to tell the stories of people who refuse to stay silent. Stories of revenge, justice, and freedom that most people are too afraid to share out loud. If you're here for that, if you're here because you believe some battles are worth fighting, then you're in the right place.
Click that next video.
There's always another story worth hearing.